Well, there's just 38 days to go until Fremantle season opener, so we're doing a big temperature check on all things Dockers today on the West Sports Show. My name's Chris Robinson, and the man who's with me, I would say, has probably watched the most amount of Freo training over this summer of any human who's not actually on the Dockers payroll. Craig O'Donoghue, welcome to the show, mate.
I have watched a lot of training. That's a good, accurate statement.
Yeah, accurate.
I've seen them a fair bit, and they're a really interesting case this year. Whilst I've seen a lot of them, I walk away a lot of time going, I still don't know what they're going to be. I still don't know who's going to play in which position, and that's what makes them really fascinating. They are trying things.
Yeah.
And when you try things, you throw it all into the melting pot and you see what comes out. So there's still a lot of work for all of the players to convince the coach that I'm the best person for this position.
Well, I'm wearing my purple bracelet here that my beautiful daughter Ava made for me this morning, so it's only fitting that we're talking about the purple team. And there's a particular area that you want to focus on today. So when it comes to Fremantle, we largely know what we're expecting from their defensive unit. We largely know what we're expecting through the middle of the ground, very settled through both of those areas, but it's the forward line that has you intrigued over summer. What's caught your eye on the track? And what are you expecting over the coming weeks as there's a real sort of jostle for positions here?
There's probably a dozen guys who are fighting for the 7, maybe 8 spots with the extra player on the bench now. And you look at someone like Jye Amiss, who spent time on the wing the other week, and you go, well, he had some little moments on the wing at times last year, but if he goes up onto the wing and suddenly opens up a spot in the forward line for someone else and then goes back to the forward line later on, well, that's going to change some things. He looked good on the wing too, like kicked goals from the wing. And then Mason Cox was playing as a forward and he kicked goals. And then Hayden Young was at full forward and he kicked a goal. And Caleb Sarong pushed forward. Then you look at Murphy Reid, who's playing in the midfield a lot, and you think, well, he was a forward last year. What does that mean for Shea Bolton? And I just thought if you go through how they lined up last year from a goal-kicking perspective, so Josh Tracy kicked the most goals with 44. Then it was Pat Voss on 37, Jye Amiss on 32. So suddenly we say Amiss is playing further up the field. Michael Frederick kicks his 30. Shea Bolton kicked 28, but was also a midfielder a lot of the time. Is he going to be more of a permanent forward this time? Or is Murphy Reid, who kicked his 25, is he going to be more in the midfield, or is he going to be closer to goal? Luke Jackson kicked 20 goals last year. Is he a midfielder now, or is he going to get forward a bit? Isaiah Dudley kicked 15 and Sam Switkowski kicked 11. So there's so many of those guys who are battling out for where am I going to play, what am I going to do? And if Amiss suddenly goes up the ground or Voss plays deep or Bolton's in the midfield or Murphy Reid's in the midfield, it just changes everything. And I reckon it's really fascinating as to who will line up where.
I love that you mentioned that goal-kicking spread there. So they had 7 guys that you just mentioned there with 20-plus goals for the season. One other club last year did that. One other club had 7 guys with 20-plus. Do you know who it was?
Was it Brisbane?
It was Brisbane, who were reigning premiers. So you've got to be mindful of how much do we love. Obviously, the spread is super important, right? And we've seen that with premiers historically. You have that real spread and that depth of talent and guys who can hit the scoreboard. How much do you factor in? We don't want to mess with this too much because it was a pretty nice formula. What was Amos's tally there? 32 from last year?
32, yeah.
But then we also need to find something different because we need to have success in September. So let's start with Amiss. Is Amiss sustainable as a permanent or largely permanent wing guy? Do you think that actually works, and do you think they'll actually try it?
I don't think he's sustainable as a permanent wing player. I think what we saw last year, though, was that he was playing as a sacrificial lamb a lot of the time. They were a 3-tall forward line, and not a lot of clubs went as tall as what they did. And there were times where he barely touched the footy for a half. But you look at him, he's miles away from where the ball was, and it was a case of, well, Pat Voss and Josh Tracy needed to be one-on-one to be able to have their dominance, whereas when Amiss was around them, that third tall came off and helped out the entire time. Yep. So he'd just run away and be nowhere near the ball.
Sure.
But Justin Longmuir kept saying, we don't care if he's only touched the ball 3 times in the game and kicked 1 goal. He's doing what we want him to do. So if he's going to be doing that, why not play him on the wing rather than just have him in the forward line running off? Use his ability to run by playing him on the wing, and then you send him down forward later on and he can have an impact there when he's basically destroyed the person he's running on because that person's now tired if that is a key defender following him around. So, yeah, he's a really interesting case with that because I don't think the 3 talls necessarily worked for them all the time. I think a lot of the time they definitely looked too tall. And with the small forwards they've got at their feet, I think that can be really, really damaging when you consider if you have Reid and Bolton and Dudley and Switkowski and Frederick all running around at ground level. It does change a lot of things for them. And we've seen how damaging in finals smaller players are.
There was a training notes from Freo that you put together the last week or the week before where you talked about Amiss and a bit of sort of match simulation stuff that they were doing, and you made a really good point about him being up on the wing, the level of confidence that you can get if you're a bit more around the footy like that, as opposed to, like you said, being lost for a half if you're really deep. And then what that means for the rest of his game and the flow-on effect. And with someone like Amiss, who's still relatively young, like that's a factor, right?
Yeah, and I think one thing we always forget with Amiss is that when you're playing under-18 footy and he was kicking goals and just wasn't missing, the reason he wasn't missing was because in under-18 footy, there are the density rules, the anti-density rules they're called. So at every stoppage, you have to have a certain number of players behind centre, a certain number of players inside 50, and then you need to have someone in the goal square at different points. So it's like the 6-6-6 rules, but they're permanently in. So he was playing within 20 to 30 metres of goal all the time. So he's a 6 to 7 touch per game player, and he'd kick 5 goals won. Every time he touched it, he'd kick a goal. Now he's required to do things differently, and you can't be just touching it 5 or 6 times per game. So he's getting him to have the ball more will teach him to get used to that sort of a game. So I think that's really important, to get him up on the wing and getting him involved. As you say, building his confidence and making him believe they want me to have the footy. They don't just want me to take my man away from the other 2 big blokes who they must consider to be better than me. And then when you do get a shot, you're going, I might only get one more shot for the game. I need to make the most of this opportunity. So, yeah, giving him the chance to touch the footy more, I think will be really, really important for them. The other thing which I find really, really interesting out of them is how they traded, or more how they drafted and then added players this year. So Adam Swade, small forward, pick 25. Tobin Murray, a mature age draft pick for them. He's a forward as well. Mason Cox can play forward and is an accurate shot for goal, as well as being a ruckman. Leon Kickett kicked 16 goals in the Colts last season. And they've got Chris Sherry, who is training with them at the moment, who looks pretty good and is at the front of the pack to get that SSP position. So they're adding forwards. They're trying to do more things. And Charlie Nichols, who they drafted the previous year, has looked really good over summer as well. So they're adding options to that forward line. Now, it's hard to get into the team when you are a club that is trying to get into the top 4. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if Tobin Murray doesn't start the year in the team, but finishes the year in the team. I think he looks like the sort of guy over pre-season who you go, you've got something, and has a few blokes he's got to get in front of first. But once he gets in due to an injury or a form situation, I can see him being the sort of guy who just isn't going to be droppable afterwards, because he looks clean, he looks composed. Kicked 22 goals from 17 games in the VFL last year. He's 20 years old, so he's just got that composure and body size about him. And he's played at Geelong, where they just turn players into footballers all the time. Yep. So he's one to watch throughout the year for when he gets his chance, you go, oh, you look like you belong.
Yeah, so pick 40 out of last year's draft, as you said, that Geelong VFL program, which we know all about, is 179 centimetres. Is that right to you? That's what I had written down here.
Looks bigger than his height, which is I always like. When you watch someone and you go, how tall are you? That doesn't seem right. That's always a good sign, I reckon. Because you're doing something different which makes you look taller because of you stand tall, or you play against bigger blokes and win the footy. He looks taller than what he's listed at.
Yeah. So is he the guy to you who has emerged the most from an expectation point of view over summer? Is he the guy who has stood out to you going, oh, probably didn't expect that from him? Absolutely,
100%. You look at him and you go, you look like an AFL player. And whereas most draftees, you go, I think you might make it into the future. Adam Swade's a good example. Like, he was picked 25, so he's still really, he's not the elite pick of a top 20 selection or a top 10 selection. And you look at him and you go, I can see why they picked you. I can see how in a few years' time you're going to have some tricks about you, but I don't think you're going to be ready yet, because you've still got to get fitter, get stronger, be able to do all the defensive work and understand things. And he only kicked the 7 goals last year in the Coach League as well. So he's got a bit of work to do around certain elements of his game, but you can see the reasons why they picked him. Whereas Murray, you look at it and you go, oh, I can see why they picked you, and I can see how you're training right now. It makes me go, you can probably play pretty early.
Yeah, and turns 21 in May, as you said, so he's got that extra couple of years under his belt. Before we do the Mason Cox thing, there's a great deal currently on offer for all WA footy fans. You can score a free WA AAMI AFL Origin Guernsey with a 12-month subscription to the West Australian. Subscribe now for $6 per week. Visit thewest.com.au/footypack or follow the link in this episode's description. Limited time only and T's and C's apply.
Just one more on the Murray situation. So if you look back, I can see him finishing the year in the team, not necessarily starting. Yep. So if you look back to round one last year and then you have a look towards finals last season, Freo had 6 changes to that team from round one onwards. And Voss wasn't in the team in round one. Isaiah Dudley wasn't in the team in round one. So that's the forward line change. They had like Liam Reedy in the forward line at that point, and that was the only time he played for the year. And they had Josh Draper in the back line, and they had a few other differences in their midfield as well. But that's why I think what we're going to see with this forward line this year is they're going to start probably with the guys you know, because that's just what you do. You pick the blokes who you can rely upon the entire time. And then from there, when opportunities bob up, someone will grab it. And as much as there were different times last year where we go, Michael Frederick didn't have a great year. He made some mistakes in the finals. He had some down games. Still finished 7th in the best and fairest and kicked 30 goals. So actually had a better year than what we probably on the outside rated him.
Yeah. There's just some moments that stick in the mind, right?
Correct. We remember the bad things that he did. Sure. Isaiah Dudley, as I said, was subbed off 6 times from 16 games last year. So he'll get more game time this year if he's that sub role, because the sub doesn't exist anymore. He gets the extra minutes from being that extra player on the bench. If you look at the importance of Sam Switkowski to that team, he got subbed off in round one due to injury. So if you exclude that game where he didn't finish, the Dockers were 12-4 when he played. So sometimes we can get caught up in, what about this game, or what about this moment, or how do they look in certain situations? But when you put the group together, it's how that group forms a combination that will help the forward line to make them win games, not necessarily how each individual is playing in each game.
We'll touch on Luke Jackson in a little bit more depth shortly, but the Mason Cox question, so as I said off the top, 38 days from now, round one, as we sit here right now, do you think he's in their round one side?
I think he will be.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Jackson's going to play as a midfielder at the moment. They've got Cox in there under the assumption that Darcy isn't going to get through the season playing every game, and Jackson is the same. So, especially, and if you want to play Jackson as a midfielder, he's more likely to get hurt just by the way he's going to play. He's going to throw himself in the entire time. So I like the fact they went and got a genuine ruckman to help out, which takes the pressure off Darcy having to get this calf right straight away. And there's a chance he might not be available for round one just based on his history more than anything. A calf now, not a good thing to do. Do you look after him a little bit? Possibly. It could be 2 weeks. Who knows? We'll just wait and see. But I think what we've seen from Cox so far is he can play forward, he can play in the ruck. They like being a tall team. They are a tall coaching group. So
that's true.
You look at Justin Lomier, who was a forward ruck. Jamie Graham could play forward ruck. Jade Rawlings could ruck and play forward. Sure. Could play both ends as well. So they are a big group and they have faith in their big men. So I think there is a strong possibility that Cox plays early, whether it's as a ruckman or even going forward. But yeah, I do think that the way they look at the moment is a bloody strong chance he's in that team. And
the big guys don't get any smaller as the game goes on. That's been scientifically proven and mentioned a lot of times.
No one's ever got shorter. No one's ever shrunk during a game.
Yeah, heights very rarely change during a game. What else has caught, before we go into that Luke Jackson stuff, what else has caught your eye on the track down at Coburn? And I wanted to ask you about the sub as well, because you mentioned it there, the fact that it's no longer here. Is there any indication about how Fremantle might approach this? Because this is going to be a point of intrigue, right, as to how clubs actually look at this. Do they hold out a guy for the entire first half and have it as sort of a quasi kind of sub role? Or do you think it would literally just be as simple as we have an extra guy on the bench, we're rotating 5 guys through?
If I was coaching, I wouldn't be taking off the best player in the comp to have more time on the bench to give the 23rd player, or the best player in your team, dropping him from 80 to 75% game time to give the 23rd best player, 55% game time instead of 50. I would have thought that the bloke who is at the end of the bench. At the end of the bench is the end of the bench, and will be more of an impact sort of player. But I think it might also, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Fremantle be using that spot as a midfielder. So get more depth through your midfield. We've seen Hayden Young playing at full forward, at some points of the season, of the pre-season, where instead of him going to the bench, he'll go and rest forward and
is a proven goal kicker,
proven goal kicker, just doesn't miss. So in the same session, Caleb Sarong, pushed really deep forward, kick a goal as well. So I can see them, and they've tried this in the past where it didn't necessarily work for them because they got some injuries afterwards, but where they've wanted to have a midfielder who can go forward. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them throw an extra midfielder into the team and then instead of a midfielder going to the bench, that midfielder goes forward to try to jag a goal here and there. Because the one weakness that they clearly have from their midfielders, they don't kick enough goals. There's no one who you go, oh, you're going to kick us 25, 30 goals a year as a midfielder. I think they'd love to produce that sort of a player. And then that would allow Bolton to go into the midfield, Murphy Reid to go into the midfield as well. And they'd love for Johnson and Erasmus to have some more opportunities in there also. So, yeah, that's going to be an interesting part about how they handle it, who that type of player is. And I think all clubs are going to mix and match and see what they do. A lot of clubs will play an extra ruckman. Freo already have one.
Yeah.
So I think of that, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that person being a midfielder who just gets up more opportunities than what they have in the past.
Sure. Well, before we talk about Luke Jackson and a bit about State of Origin stuff, a word on the game's footy tipping being back for 2026. Sign up by February 22 and you'll automatically enter the draw to win $10,000 thanks to Thirsty Camel. That's $10K in your pocket before the season has even started. So join today at thegame.com.au. COD, the Origin teams are out. The squads of 25 are locked in now for Western Australia and for Victoria. A really interesting point with WA in the past couple of days, adding Tim English to that squad while Darcy Cameron and Luke Jackson are already in there, which seems to me to be a pretty big hint that Luke Jackson is not going to do much rucking in this game, right?
No, he's not going to ruck at all. I think he might be the bloke who runs over and goes, oh, he couldn't get to the stoppage because it's been thrown up quickly.
I'll do a couple,
I'll do that one. But yeah, he's a midfielder, I think.
Yeah, so it's really intriguing because, as I say, you've seen a lot of Freo. Justin Longmuir is on the coaching panel for the WA Origin side. Is this a big hint as to how they will deploy him at the Dockers? Are we going to get a bit of a sneak preview of this on February 14?
Yeah, I think we absolutely are. And in fact, Dean Cox is the coach of the WA team as well, another ruckman.
Sure.
He knows exactly what he wants to see from Tim English and Darcy Cameron. So, yeah, I think it's going to be really important because the midfield is lacking depth for WA, whereas the Victorian midfield is just out of control. So I think having Jackson in there gives WA some power, some height, and something which we just don't know what the hell Luke Jackson will do. Like, he could absolutely tear games apart as a midfielder. He could get totally lost as a midfielder at the same time, but he can do crazy things that not many other blokes can. So I think it's going to be exciting to see with freedom and no real structure because they're going to have only a couple of days to pull this together. I think he could just be the go do whatever you feel like you want to do out there and just see how talented you can be.
So those squads being locked in sort of allows us to break down a few of the numbers and see, probably just realise just how much of an underdog the West Australians really are, which they'll enjoy, don't get me wrong. But this is what we're dealing with. So in these squads, just on last season's numbers, right? Last season's stats. So WA have 2 club best and fairest from last season. Victoria have 9. When it comes to all-Australian berths from last season, WA have 3, which is Taylor, Clark and Pickett. Victoria have 12. And when it comes to Brownlow votes from last year, total Brownlow votes, WA have 102 amongst their 25-man squad. More than half of those come from 3 guys, Warner, Cripps and Jackson, have 57. So 102. How many Brownlow votes do you reckon the Victorian squad has compared to WA's 102?
4,361.
The answer is 368.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Compared to 102. Obviously, that really highlights in particular the midfield disparity here, which you mentioned, Warner and Cripps for WA, and then it really tails off from there with the likes of Pickett and Bolshan and Canelio and these sorts of guys going through there, as opposed to name whoever you like, Dacos, Bontempelli, Butters, Sarong.
And that's the thing. You mentioned the best and fairest for Victoria. Victoria's list of best and fairest does not include Nick Dacos or Marcus Bontempelli.
Yeah, who might be their 2 best players.
Or Noah Anderson.
Yeah.
They can do some real damage in that department. But what you can't take into account from those stats is that there will be 55,000 people in the grandstand who will be providing the energy that a footy team needs to win when you are an underdog. And I love the fact that Dean Cox is calling on the history of WA footy as a motivating force for this team. So I look back to when State of Origin footy was at its absolute height in the 80s, right? And I was living in Victoria. I grew up in Victoria. And you watch the games, and as a Victorian, you didn't know who half the guys were, but the whole country knew who all the Victorian guys were. Now, the WA guys were massive names in Perth, but they weren't massive names nationally. So there was an expectation that Victoria would win. But WA won often. especially at home, because it's different.
Yeah.
And once you pull the jumper on and once you go after the footy in a one-on-one contest, you've still got to want to win the footy. You've still got to go as hard as possible. And if you've got the crowd behind you, sometimes you just go a bit harder. So, and if pride's on the line and it is February 14 and suddenly, I'm only allowed to play 65% game time and I'm on to 63% game time and I haven't been hurt yet, and this guy's running at you who's just come off the bench and is feeling good about himself, well, it can be really challenging. I reckon what we'll find is the speedy players within the WA team, there's plenty of guys who are quick, they'll be damaging and you still got to catch them. And there'll be plenty of key forwards who can take marks, and the key defenders can play one-on-one.
Yeah.
So if the midfield can break even at times and just put pressure on and not give Bontempelli and Dacos the chance to run around and do as they please, then that's where the competition in the game will rise.
Mate, you've probably surprised a few people to reveal that you remember State of Origin footy in the 80s. You look about 35. I think that'd stun a few people.
Yeah, I do look younger than you.
Do you moisturise?
I don't moisturise. No, my brother-in-law always tells me that I dye my hair, which I don't. But no,
I don't dye my hair either. Just so you know.
I can say there's a couple of speckles there that I can see. Now I don't have great memories of the matches themselves and what happened in the 80s.
Yeah.
But I remember rushing home from school to watch.
Appointment viewing.
Yeah, it was, you must watch these. And I was really fortunate that at primary school, my grade 5 teacher was Collingwood's under-19s coach.
Oh, wow, okay.
He was big on, you must all go home, you must all watch the game, and you must your homework is to come back and tell me what happened the next day.
That's great.
So he was just so passionate about the game, and that sort of drilled into my part of my love of footy and stuff. And then from then on, state games always felt like they had something. A lot of the teachers at school were all like, you must all go home and watch this. This matters. Tuesday afternoon footy, all that sort of stuff. So it was great. So I'm really looking forward to it coming back. And I also look at, I think back to Victorian games where David Kelthorpe was best on ground in the game. And
good Essendon mention from you.
Good Essendon mention, but he barely played footy, but he had a really good year and he played for Victoria and he dominated the game. Brent Harvey, no one had barely heard of Brent Harvey when he won an E.J. Whitten medal. So someone always bobs up, and there will be someone who goes out and absolutely tears his game apart, and we'll all go, ooh, I wasn't expecting him to do that. I wasn't expecting him to kick 4 or 5 goals or have 30 possessions. There was always somebody who you go, wow, that bloke's a better player than what I thought he was, because in his team, he's got a different sort of a role, or the freedom of the game or something. There will be someone who will make us all go, man, that bloke, we need to see more of him and we need to pay more attention to him. Even though there's stars everywhere, someone will jump above everybody else.
Well, we'll be all across the build-up at thewest.com.au, featuring plenty of your work over the next week and a half. Cod, thanks so much for your time on the West Sports Show.
Thanks, Robbo.
And to our listeners, thank you very much for joining us as well. Stay tuned to the website for all the latest footy news and analysis. Chat to you next time.